Good morning, everyone. That was supposed to be a quiet weekend, the international break, Celtic not in action, but it seems to me that the situation around Celtic has escalated somewhat over the weekend. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Josh McCafferty. We're here to chat through all the news and the events and the reaction and everything that's happened over the last few days. Josh, how are you doing on Monday? Um, Eventful weekend. We'll go through all the statements and stuff in a second, but what's your kind of overall view on how everything has panned out over the last couple of days?
Yeah, good. Thanks, John. Had a good weekend. When we were on the briefing on Friday, I expected the real main talking point of the weekend in terms of football to be the Scotland game on Friday evening, but obviously that's not the case. It was a real kind of roller coaster of a weekend in terms of statements, in terms of even we had the Dyson Maida comments coming out just after we were on the briefing on Friday as well.
Yeah,
Just a lot
jeez.
going on. A lot going on with Celtic at the minute, and yeah, I think there's a lot to get our teeth into today. So but it's good in a sense in that regard.
Those Dice and Maeda comments had just gone right to the back of my brain, but we will cover those as well. Okay, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Celtic statement first, going to go through the action, then we're going to discuss some of the content in it. So, in case you haven't seen this over the last few days, Celtic released a statement at around 9 p.m. on Saturday night, which was their response to all the outcry to how things transpired in the summer with regard to the Champions League exit and transfer strategy, etc. So Celtic said, following constructive meetings yesterday with representatives of the Celtic Supporters Association, the affiliation of registered Celtic supporters clubs, and the Association of Irish Celtic Supporters Clubs, the club thanks them for conveying the concerns of their members and Celtic supporters more widely. The club takes Celtic supporters' views extremely seriously, and the club understands the concerns and frustrations which have arisen. We are listening to the views expressed by our supporters, welcome dialogue, and we are always willing to learn lessons. The club is committed to engagement with supporters, and we will work hard to address the concerns and frustrations that have been raised. Achieving success from the field of play underpins everything we do. The club's strategy over many years has been dedicated to that objective, and we will always strive to achieve it. Celtic supporters play an integral part in the success of the club, and we are committed to delivering success for them. Transfer activity attracts enormous attention and speculation, particularly across social media, and the mainstream media has commoditised it. Commoditised the transfer window and its relentless search for content. In connection with Celtic, we recognise that debate around this subject reflects the passion of our supporters. Unfortunately, as is often the case in the media and social media, there is inaccurate or misleading information in circulation. It is clear from our meetings with supporters representatives and from feedback from supporters in recent weeks that supporters seek clarity. We would therefore like to address several key points directly. Like every supporter, we are ambitious for Celtic. Our shared objective is football success, to succeed in Scotland and to compete in the Champions League. We are disappointed this season not to compete in the Champions League, but we are determined to succeed both domestically and in Europe. However, the club must adhere to our self-sustaining model to protect the present and secure the future, ensuring Celtic remains strong for generations to come. The club's model has been developed and applied over many years, and during that period, the club has enjoyed a sustained period of success and growth. Further, the club's model is not optional. It is now essential as a consequence of the UEFA sustainability regulations with which the club must comply. Wages and transfer spending are strictly governed by UEFA's regulations, which effectively cap wages and transfer spending as a proportion of our revenues. Importantly, the club's cash reserves are not relevant to the assessment of this de facto spending cap for the purposes of UEFA regulations. Therefore, all investment decisions must be and are guided by responsible forecasts of future revenues and cash flow, which by their nature are volatile. We can never compromise the financial integrity of the club. In short, throwing money at transfers and contracts is not a sustainable route to success, as many other clubs have found to the detriment of their supporters. Over many years, careful management of the club's model has allowed the club to remain debt-free and to build strong cash reserves. It is important to remain disciplined in our approach. The cash reserves reflected in our accounts exist for the continuous improvement of Celtic Football Club and to manage the inherent volatility within football. These funds are used in measured fashion for investment in recruitment, infrastructure and long-term development. We will always listen to our supporters who have the club's interests at heart and how we can continue to develop the club within these parameters. They concluded by saying it is not always possible to achieve all of the objectives set within a transfer window, and that is regrettable. We share our supporters' disappointment. We will always continue to review and seek to improve our strategy and execution. Successful transfers can only be negotiated privately. It would be impossible to secure players if every stage were conducted in public. From time to time, other parties may also seek to create pressure by leaking information to the media. The club's position is clear. Transfer business will remain confidential until agreements are concluded and announced by the club. It follows, therefore, that much of what is written in the media or online about our transfer dealings is inaccurate. We also understand that this leads to frustration among supporters. While we cannot comment during ongoing negotiations, we are exploring ways to seek to address the gap between speculation and reality once each transfer window closes, in order to improve clarity for our supporters. We thank Celtic supporters for their unmatched passion and commitment. We all share the same ambition to see Celtic succeed on the pitch while remaining strong and secure off it. We hope this statement provides clarity about our transfer policy and reassurance of our unwavering dedication to Celtic's short, medium and long-term success. Oh, right. Apologies that I had to read all that out. I just felt it necessary to get it all out there, and also to read it a bit and consider it in the cold light of day. On Saturday night when it came out, emotions were running high. Everyone's picking out little bits from the statement, little bits here and here. What's wrong with this? And to just consider the whole statement again after a couple of days when we've all had a couple of sleeps. But Josh, for me, the reaction and the statement are just entirely tone deaf, and there's actually a fair amount of disingenuous arguments in there within that for me. A bit of weird justification for the transfer sluggishness. I think for me, pitching the kind of frustration with the transfer window on speculation, when I feel like most people are judging the transfer window on like the confirmed outcomes of what Celtic's squad is at the end of the transfer window. That's a key misstep for me, because I think it insults the intelligence of a lot of supporters. We know Celtic supporters are proud of their knowledge and information around the club and what they know about the club, and I think to reduce it to that as kind of being led by the media or social media or whoever is pretty reductive and will be insulting to a lot of supporters.
Yeah, I think on the whole, the statement is just insulting to a lot of supporters in many ways. You know, it's 1,030 words long, and it's quite incredible that they've made a statement that lengthy and they've not really managed to make any decent arguments in it. I think the statement, or the open letter that was released by Northcroft Celtic, and a lot of it was signed by fan media and other organisations, etc., outlined 7 key questions. I don't think any of them were answered in that statement by Celtic on Saturday, and there are a number of issues with it. You know, you sneak it out at 8 minutes to 9 on a Saturday night. That doesn't look great in any way. There is no name attached to the statement either. That doesn't look great. And yeah, it's condescending, very condescending. I think it insults the nature of supporters by its tone, by how it's making these arguments. And in terms of what it's trying to say about the transfer dealings, just in isolation, for example, they don't actually make any sound arguments if you actually read through it about why Celtic missed out on some of their key targets. They didn't really say anything. They just tried to blame it on the media and tried to deflect it to speculation, like you say, which again is not a great look and insults the intelligence of supporters. So on the whole, I think it's a very poor statement. I think Celtic have shot themselves in the foot with it, if I'm being completely honest, and it just doesn't look great at all.
There's points in there about UEFA sustainability. Now, my understanding is that the levels, Celtic are well below the threshold with regard to UEFA rules in their current state, or even if there was more investment in the squad this summer, just given the profits they've made on transfers over the last few years. As far as I'm aware, UEFA regulations are something that Celtic have to be aware of, but they're not a hindrance or a barrier to Celtic concluding the business that was required this summer. I think it's also strange that, you know, Celtic went down this route of kind of saying we cannot give an update on every transfer as it happens. I don't know who has ever asked for that or what feedback they got from that, but no Celtic supporter that I've ever spoken to has expected Celtic to give an update on their transfer details in real time after every bid they make, to come out and say we've made a bid. That's absurd. No club across Europe does that. That's not what anyone has been asking for Celtic, and I think Celtic to latch onto that and present it as some sort of argument of why they're not communicating more with the fans is also very, very strange, Josh.
Yeah, certainly. Supporters don't want to know what's happening on a day-to-day basis with the transfers. They just want the transfer business to be conducted quicker, to be conducted in a more effective manner, and obviously that's not happening. So yeah, that was a bit strange, and I think the club forget as well that when they talk about all these UEFA regulations and things like that, that this information is widely available to the general public, and if they're making inaccurate claims about it, supporters can go and check what the actual rules and regulations are for themselves. So if Celtic are being not saying the truth or not being accurate in that regard, yourself, John, you've checked out. A lot of people have checked out as well. So I think they forget that, which is a bit strange as well. So
The
I
UEFA
genuinely,
stuff, yeah. Sorry, just to cut in. Just the UEFA stuff was debunked within about 20 minutes of the statement going out. Like
exactly.
that's how badly wrong they got that stuff. You know.
And that's just that just sums the whole thing up in general for me. Even like the financial side of things as well. That kind of UEFA, it proves the point a lot of people make that the club has been run by kind of conservative businessmen who are scared to kind of not splash the cash but spend the money. I don't think that can be an issue as well. But even they fail to address issues like the recruitment and the so many failed transfer dealings Celtic have had this summer. Why Brendan Rodgers was making comments in the media about getting key players in and things like that, and why he didn't get them. They failed to address that. They failed to address the fan survey. Obviously, it was outlined in the open letter to supporters to the club as well. So, just a tone deaf statement on the whole, and it's a disaster for Celtic.
It's also they talk about the benefits of having these cash reserves. Now, like it's not an inherently bad thing for Celtic to have money, right? But I don't think anyone, again, no Celtic fan I know is asking for Celtic to spend all 70 million of whatever those cash reserves are in one summer. That's not what anyone is saying. They're not saying spend 70 million on players and put Celtic in a difficult position, in a position where they're not self-sustainable. Again, that is just not the argument that's occurring here. And if Celtic think that's the argument, then they're wrong. And if they know what the real arguments are and they're putting this statement out, then it's gaslighting to an extent. It's disingenuous. Yeah. It's not effective communication. Is what I'm trying to say. And I know we've been talking about Celtic have to communicate with the sport more and be more forthright and be more honest, but statements like this I think do more harm than good. And Stephen McGowan likened it to pouring a can of paraffin on a burning bin fire at the weekend, and I have to concur. Like, that's what has happened here. Whoever advised Celtic that this was the statement that should be put out, as I said last week, badly advised them. I think the PR coming out of Celtic at the moment is atrocious. I think it's stuck 20 years in the past. I think there's a real lack of transparency. Even in a statement that's supposed to provide clarity, offers no clarity at all. Lots of vague words, vague buzzwords, kind of obfuscating of what the facts of the matter, and it doesn't sit well with me personally. And I know it doesn't, don't just take my word for it. I mean, it doesn't sit well with the wider Celtic support. Two of the organisations that they mentioned in the statement, first the Celtic Supporters Association, they had a response to everything that happened over the weekend. They said, following on from our meeting on Friday with Michael Nicholson and other representatives of Celtic Football Club, we convened a meeting today of our member branches to give a report on the aforementioned meeting. The member branches were dissatisfied with the answers to our questions, and as a consequence have decided to place a vote of no confidence on the board of Celtic Football Club. The Association of Irish Celtic Supporters Clubs also released a statement. They said, on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Association of Irish Celtic Supporters Clubs, we wish to formally express our complete and utter disappointment in relation to Celtic FC's statement on 6th of September 2025. While we acknowledge the dialogue held with the representatives of the supporters associations, and while we appreciate the recognition of fans' passion and loyalty, we remain deeply concerned about the future direction and priorities of the club. In a somewhat patronising statement, we feel the club completely underestimates the passion, anger, and even the intelligence of the Celtic support. Defending complete underperformance in recent transfer windows with business jargon and keywords of self-sustaining models and financial integrity is just an insult to the intelligence of our support. We simply don't believe that the current strategies in place at the club will allow us to compete at the highest level. We also believe that our current approach falls short of the ambition required to achieve continued success both domestically and in Europe. We fully endorse the position of all Celtic supporters and call for clarity, open communication, and a commitment to strengthen our team and improve the overall matchday experience for the club's largest stakeholder, the fans. Northcurve Celtic released a statement which seems to be on behalf of the Green Brigade, Northcurve Celtic, Boys Celtic, and the Celtic Trust. They said Celtic released a statement, a condescending and unsigned statement which failed to address the concerns raised in an open letter which has amassed 378 signatories representing tens of thousands of Celtic fans worldwide. They also issue a vote of no confidence in the Celtic board. The CSA, the Celtic Supporters Association, has also now signed the open letter. While it's also our expectation that the majority of the open letter signatories would also endorse this vote, we are unable to add them without consent. To that end, we are in the process of arranging a consultation meeting of all signatories to the open letter to discuss and agree next steps. Arrangements for the meeting will be communicated to all signatories as soon as possible. While we firmly believe further escalatory actions are necessary, we are committed to building a fully engaged, inclusive and democratic fan movement which acts on the consensus of the fans within it. We are conscious that there are many individual fans not currently represented, and part of the consultation will now involve how we navigate this. So it's not just our, dissatisfaction with the statement. We are two people. It's the dissatisfaction, I would argue, of thousands of Celtic supporters, and I think that's key in all this. It seems like, again, Josh, there's real unity across the board here. It seems like next steps are now being taken with regard to organised meetings and an apparent democratic process to organise all of this. There are massive challenges in that, Josh, but I think the Celtic board have picked a fight with the Celtic fans here, and this isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever, in my whole time of living, seen the kind of Celtic support more united against the people running the club. I think they have every right to, and it's people will say, "Oh, these supporters' letters, these statements don't hold much weight." But when you have tens of thousands of people in these associations, and the open letter, it holds so much weight. The supporters are really the lifeblood of the club, and if they're demanding change, I think their opinions have much more value than the men in suits that run the club. When you consider the reaction as a whole to this statement, not just myself and your reaction, John, everyone's reaction, Celtic would have just been better off not making it. I think the mood would have been slightly better if they didn't make this statement. They've really shot themselves in the foot. I'm intrigued to see what the next steps are going to be. Obviously, with a number of groups beginning to take real action now. Obviously, Celtic back in action this Sunday. I think there will be more developments in this kind of saga before then, and I'm really intrigued to see what happens, if there's going to be any more communication from Celtic, if it's going to be improved, whatever's going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see.
It seems key to me as well that perhaps lessons have been learned from mistakes in the past, where, again, the COVID season was very unique in the sense of fans. A lot of people couldn't go outside, never mind, organised protests at the stadium, and that overspilled into some ugly scenes outside Celtic Park, I would suggest. I think what's happening here is, as we kind of discussed last week, it's a lot more measured, it's a lot more considered, it's a lot smarter, is what I would say, is just the response to all of this, and trying to engage as wide a group of people as possible, trying to put in place processes that make this far more organised and more effective in relaying, whatever the consensus of the fans is. And I think that's key for me. Over the years, we know a lot that consensus can be hard to reach among Celtic supporters. But it seems to me that there's a real consensus now that things need to change at Celtic in terms of the processes and strategies in place, because what's happening now just doesn't seem fit for purpose. I mean, Celtic cite all these challenges of, agents leaking things to the press and clubs being hard to deal with, the UEFA regulations, whatever they want to name. But what it doesn't acknowledge again in that statement is that is true for every single club in Europe. It's true for every single club. It's not these challenges are not unique to Celtic. I think this idea that Celtic have, that there's some exceptionalism here at play where it's so difficult for Celtic and not difficult for any other club, is again just one of those absurd kind of logic missteps that the Celtic board are making here in the way that they're presenting this kind of defensive outlook on things.
Yeah, and I think adding to that point as well, you have numerous sporting directors of clubs have come out this summer and said that Celtic have made multiple offers for their players, and several of the offers have been below the valuation. So that's not people leaking stuff to the press. That is people who work at clubs telling you the truth. I think Celtic forget that happens as well in the modern day and age. So the media ourselves aren't trying to feed false information to the fans. A lot of stuff you report is genuine, it's real information. And I think the club forget that in this modern day and age, that happens, and they're just seemingly a number of decades behind in terms of what they think should be going on and what does go on.
Yeah, and I think they need to understand that, again, PR and media has moved on. Like you say, it's clubs talking to the media openly, especially foreign outlets. They have a much more fluid relationship with the press in a lot of cases. And Celtic need to catch up, frankly. And look, we're saying, I totally get your point with regard to Celtic shouldn't have released that statement at all. In my head, it's like, it still has value for supporters because you know exactly now what the stance and what the mentality within Celtic is. It's out there in the open. And that doesn't look good for Celtic because the mentality and the stance behind closed doors is not aligned with the supporters in any way. But now it's all out there and in the open. There is some value in seeing how they think and how they operate and understanding that, you know, Celtic's PR and communications are just in a dark age, frankly, and they are in a really difficult place with that. I think unless they start changing that aspect of things as well, they're on a hide into nothing here, because whatever they say, they're not going to be able to say it in an effective way that deals with the modern realities of social media and media in 2025. You know, it's not 20 years ago. Celtic need to modernise their communications. They need to modernise a lot of things behind the scenes, as we know. And yeah, it's frustrating, Josh. But again, I think now it's all out in the open. I think it now allows things to progress forward because we know, you know, Celtic supporters know exactly what they're dealing with here.
Yeah, and they had to say something. I mean, we sat here on Friday and we said that there needs to be some sort of reaction over the coming days. And then they obviously deliver this statement, and it just adds to the point that things aren't great at the club, and the way the club has been run is not a real modern world class football club. So yeah, it's just. Obviously, I mean, I think just as an argument, they shouldn't have made the statement, but I think everyone's glad they did because it just adds to the point that things aren't great. So, yeah, I'm just, as I keep saying, I'm really intrigued to see what happens next with this whole scenario.
It also strikes me as odd that they're talking about media leaks, and then on Saturday we had this what appeared to be a briefing against Brendan Rodgers appearing in one of the major media outlets in Scotland, the Scottish Sun, which was written by their, you know, a senior figure at the Scottish Sun, so it felt like it had a bit of weight to it with regard to this might accurately reflect kind of the feeling within Celtic regarding Brendan Rodgers and the like. And again, that's just another kind of subplot to this, for that report and that apparent off the record briefing or whatever it was on Brendan Rodgers to then come out, you know, 12 hours later and say, you know, we decry all these leaks to the press, etc. It's just another example of a weird contradiction within Celtic at the moment. I said a couple of weeks ago, but Celtic are a club of contradictions at the moment. They say one thing, other things happen. Brendan Rodgers says one thing, you can clearly tell from all the evidence that the situation is something else. They don't know what to say, I think, because there's such chaos behind the scenes. And frankly, that chaos, again, was summed up better on Friday. Summed up no better on Friday than when the news about Daisuke Maeda came out. He gave interviews to Japanese media saying that he had consistently communicated to Celtic this summer that he was looking to leave the club, and he felt there was an alignment on that, but that purely because of the fact that Celtic couldn't sign a replacement, that Daisuke Maeda was not allowed to leave the club, which I think is pretty poor in this modern age again. I know a lot of people talk about club loyalty, etc., etc., but this is the reality of modern football as well. Players want to move on. You have to be in a position to be able to replace those players. And it seems to me, Josh, that it looked like Dolberg was going to be the replacement for Daisuke Maeda rather than, or something of that ilk. Or I don't know how that was meant to go down on deadline day. The targets that Celtic were pursuing, if they had let both Adam Maeda and Daisuke Maeda go, that would have been disastrous. What's your take on the Maeda situation?
Yeah, I think Daisuke Maeda, first of all, in terms of wanting to leave Celtic and agreeing terms with another club, I think he has every right to do so. You know, he gave his all to Celtic last season, really good. So I think in terms of modern football, he had every right to to move away this summer. I think it's disappointing that Celtic didn't give him that opportunity. Obviously, it's just a mark of their own incompetence in terms of the recruitment department that they weren't able to let him go and sign a valid replacement. In time, people will talk about this season going forward now as Maeda's head's going to be in it, at least going into the January transfer window. I think with Daisen Maeda, he's an intriguing case, and he's a specific case in terms of a football player, because Joe Hart said this after the Celtic Man United Legends game at the weekend, that Daisen Maeda, once he knows he's at a club for the foreseeable future, he's going to give his all. I think he's going to buckle down. I think you'll see some maybe improved performances from Maeda over the coming months, just given that probably in August, in the start of the season, his head wasn't fully in it because he knew there was an opportunity that he could leave. You maybe even seen that in some of his displays. I mean, I look at the game against Rangers where he wasn't great at all. Other games like Kairat Almaty where he misses the sitter. I think now he knows he's going to be at Celtic until at least January, so he's going to buckle down now. That's what you hope at the end of the day. But yeah, it was just disappointing on the whole to see those comments come out. Really, Celtic, it's another summer transfer window in which they've not been able to keep up with their model of selling players for big fees. I mean, Kyogo Furuhashi didn't want to get to leave last summer, and he had a desire to do so as well. So they're not really living up to their reputation of selling players for high fees, or their so-called model at the minute in terms of that.
And again, this isn't misinformation in the press or the media. This is a player directly speaking to the media representatives of his own country. And that's what. So for it to get to that state, I think Maeda is a very professional player, and I think he conducts himself very well. And I think for it to get to the stage where he feels like he needs to talk about that publicly shows a complete breakdown of whatever's happening behind the scenes. It's not great. Sandoy's asking, is it just negative, totally focusing on negative stuff again today, guys, just so I know to give it a miss? Like, unfortunately, Sandoy, it is negative at the moment because that reflects the reality of what's going on at Celtic. We don't focus on positive or negatives as a kind of strategy. We just kind of try to reflect on what's actually happening at Celtic at the moment. So if it's negative, I apologise, but that's because, unfortunately, the situation around Celtic appears to be quite negative at the moment. And yeah, the fans are in uproar, and you said, there might be more developments this week, etc. I'm intrigued to see what comes of this call for a meeting and how that manifests itself. I would imagine that would be a physical in-person meeting, and then again that throws up more kind of potential outcomes and organisation, and people start meeting socially more, and this is how movements start, Josh. This is how things build up a head of steam. But we know the challenges, and I don't think we should shy away from that either. I think the Celtic fans have a massive challenge to try to enact change at the club because of the way the shareholding sits, and with regard to Dermot Desmond, who owns the most amount of shares in the club with around 34%. It's really hard to actually make change happen within Celtic, and we know Dermot Desmond isn't exactly open to receiving feedback from a wide group of people. If he feels like he is right, then he will do what he thinks is right. He's communicated that in the past.
Yeah, Dermot Desmond has 34% of Celtic, and I think a lot of people say that he has 100% of the say of what goes on in the club, and I don't think that's too inaccurate a statement. So, yeah, it's going to be very difficult. I think the people in power at Celtic are very stubborn people who want to do it their own way, keep it 10, 15 years ago in terms of the way they're running the club. But it's going to be difficult to enact change. But when you do have tens of thousands of people coming together, I think that's a real. You've got a lot of power there, and you do have a movement there. So I think the Celtic fans have got every right to try and enact change, and it's just going to be intriguing to see how it pans out, because you've got the power and the passion and everything that a group of tens of thousands of people give you against these stubborn group of people at the club. So let's see who comes out on top at the end of the day.
Brian Warrior saying Maeda will be sold in January. Had we managed to sign Dolberg, then I believe Maeda would have been moved on, as Dolberg would have softened the blow. They are at it, and they know they are at it. I mean, I think everyone kind of knows they're at it at the moment. I just think what that statement does, again, it just underlines that it's not. I think Celtic are trying behind the scenes. I don't think they're not trying, and I feel like they are acting what they feel is in good faith based on the information they have. But it's just so misaligned with what supporters think and want from the club, and I kind of raised this point as well. Is Celtic a business that happens to play football, or is it a football team that is best served by the business that it generates? And for me, that's the kind of ideological rift at Celtic at the moment. Supporters believe it's a football team that should be served by the business it generates. It seems the people in the boardroom feel like it's a business that happens to play football. And that kind of existential crisis at the moment, I think, kind of is the backdrop to all of the discussions we're talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, you say that they think they're doing the right things, and I mean, it does say in the statement that they're working 24 hours a day of the transfer window, and I do feel like someone like Michael Nicholson, for example, will be doing a lot of work in terms of trying to get deals over the line and these such things, but I just don't think he's, in terms of him and everyone else, they're clearly not good enough for the job when you look at the evidence on paper of how Celtic's recent transfer windows have gone. So you've no doubt that they're giving their all, but sometimes giving their all isn't good enough if you're not up to the task. And another concerning mark of Daizen Maida's comments is he said that it got down to the last day of the transfer window and he still didn't know where his future lay. He didn't know what was happening, and that suggests that Celtic didn't know what was happening either, which yet again is just a massive concern.
Yes, so folks, this rumbles along. We will get to talking about football as the week develops, I would imagine. Unfortunately, as you know, this is just where Celtic are at the moment, and this is what we're dealing with. There was comments from Adam Ida that came out over the weekend. Adam Ida obviously scored for the Republic of Ireland. He told Sky Sports, he thinks, I think there have been so many games where, just his decision to leave Celtic. He was speaking about how it is to play for Celtic and the experience of playing for Celtic. So he told Sky Sports it can be tough. You can get a lot of hate. You might have a bad game and it's torture. It's a difficult place up there. But flip it the other way, you're doing well and it's the best place ever. I think there have been so many games where I've won them games and got them qualified for things. The finals, it probably goes unnoticed. I think that's what it's going to be like at any top club. You've just got to deal with that. Celtic are one of the biggest clubs in the world. It was a really proud moment for me playing for them. Having done my time there, I've had some great memories. I've got nothing bad to say about the club. It was an amazing experience for me to go and play there. So he's saying he's loved his time at Celtic. He had some amazing memories, but it was time for him to move on and have a fresh start. And look, I think the majority of people will wish Adam Ida well. I don't think we liked seeing Adam Ida struggle in recent weeks, and we didn't enjoy the fact that he never established himself as a starter at Celtic. It wasn't really working out, Josh. I would argue that Adam Ida is potentially a stronger option than what Celtic currently have within the squad. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe people will feel differently. Maybe Kelechi Iheanacho will come onto a game. Maybe Shin Yamada will come onto a game. But but I think most people will be wishing Adam Ida well.
Yeah, just need to wait and see, obviously, how Iheanacho pans out, whether he's going to be a better option than Adam Ida. But I think Adam Ida will go down to the English Championship. He'll probably do himself pretty well. Obviously, a goal for Ireland the other night too. It was a shame how his exit from Celtic panned out. Didn't really get to say a proper goodbye. Obviously, kind of going between Glasgow and Swansea, it seemed, in terms of whether he had to stay, whether he had to go. No one really knew what was happening in terms of transfers as a whole at Celtic at the end of the window. It seemed in the Adam Ida situation was another marker of that. But yeah, the Celtic supporters will wish him well. Obviously, his performances weren't really up to the mark at the start of the season, but then again, the team's performances in certain games haven't really been up to the mark at the start of the season too. But yeah, working with Alan Sheehan at Swansea, Darren O'Dea as well, I think he'll probably do pretty well and establish himself as a decent English Championship striker.
Okay, Josh, thanks for joining me. We'll be back tomorrow, everyone. We've got more videos lined up. We've got the weekly podcast as well with Hamish at some point. We've got lots coming up on the YouTube channel and the website. So we will continue on covering what's happening at Celtic, the reality of what's happening at Celtic, good or bad, folks. If things are going well at Celtic, we'd be more than happy to cover that. That is obviously what we like doing most. We like talking about Celtic in a positive and passionate fashion, but unfortunately at the moment that is having to result in reflecting what Celtic are up to, and it seems at the moment they're just badly getting everything wrong in terms of transfer strategy, in terms of communications with supporters. They need a rethink. They need to try and get into the mindset of what the who the support are, I think, first, and then try to figure out what the support want. And given the support generates so much revenue for the club, try to figure out a way to best serve that going forward in a more open and transparent way. I think that's probably my summary of the situation as it stands. We'll have lots more on the website and YouTube channel as it goes, and we'll see you again next time on the Celtic Way.